Hello, students of science. Let's talk about the characteristics of life. Your target is being able to explain the characteristics of life and why we need them. And why we need them is more or less to be able to tell whether or not something is alive. You'd think that'd be a pretty easy question, but when we get to some of our later topics, you'll see it's not actually. First up, all life that we are aware of is made out of cells. Cells are the smallest living things. Of course, there are things that are smaller than cells, like atoms and molecules, but those things aren't alive. Here we have something like single-celled bacteria, or these unicellular little creatures that you'll find in pond water. They are small, and they're of course made of things that are smaller, but those things that they're made of, not actually alive. Here we can see this is the head of a pin, and these are just a few cells, anywhere between 10 to 12. Those tiny, tiny, tiny cells might grow up to be an incredibly large organism, but this one here, definitely multicellular. Next up, reproduction. More or less, that means making more organisms. We got two different types of reproduction. We've got sexual reproduction, that's with a partner. This is the most school-friendly picture I intend on showing you about sexual reproduction. Here is a frog who is not interested in sexually reproducing with that frog. Then we've got asexual reproduction. More or less, that's without a partner. Simply put, that's just a cell kind of splitting in half. Sometimes that's called binary fission. Next up, a genetic code. Genetic code is information or a recipe for how we make an organism. In humans, the one you're probably familiar with, that we'll go into later, is of course DNA. Now right here we have a tiny, tiny organism. This is an embryonic animal. Hopefully you can guess it. The ears are kind of a giveaway. It's a baby elephant. Well, how does it know to grow up from that tiny, tiny, tiny cell into an elephant? Well, its DNA told it. This beautifully complex molecule there is composed of only 4 letters, A, C, T, and G. So think of it as like a typewriter with only 4 different keys, but in it we can make all of the diversity that is life. Growth and development. Now, growing just means you're increasing in size. Imagine, if you will, that babies grew to be full size without getting if they just got bigger. If you've ever looked at a baby, and I'm including my children in there, they look pretty weird. Their heads are huge relative to their body. So just growing is getting bigger. However, a lot of organisms develop, and it's not necessarily that the head shrunk, it's that the rest of the body kind of caught up with it. So develop means to differentiate. It just means to change your shape or change your structure. Bacteria, those very simple unicellular organisms, they grow. Humans, however, develop. Bacteria just get bigger and divide. Humans change. You can see just the brain in an embryo. It doesn't just get bigger. You can see how it's actually differentiating and coming forward and forming all those different structures that are in your brain. Here you can see from birth to adulthood how the proportions drastically change. As we go from, fertilized egg, to zygote, to blastocyst, you can see it's not just getting bigger. We're not just giant spheres. We're drastically changing in shape as we get older. Look at this puppy here. This guy did this amazing time lapse. And you can see dogs aren't just very large puppies. Of course, they're full grown, but this is an animal that's not just getting bigger, it's also changing shape, changing size, changing structure. Certain parts of it are getting larger. So growth and development. Next up, metabolism. Metabolism, more or less, is eating and pooping. It's using materials and energy. By the way, I'm not going to show you any images of pooping, but shockingly, those are out there. Even plants are going to do metabolism. Plants use the sun's energy to make food in a process that we know as photosynthesis. And of course, well, it does come out the other end. I lied, I'm showing you a little bit of poop, but not too bad. Yeah, this is why you never want to be near hippos, for many reasons, but they like to spray their poop. Next up, response. Organisms detect and respond to stimuli from their environment. Take one of these rabbits here, playing a game of, I don't know, hopscotch or whatever passes for rabbit thing. But as that one approaches, you can see this one responds to changes in its environment. And you know what? Even plants do this too. Plants will grow toward the light. You may have seen something like that. Or there's even a little plant out there called the mimosa where when you sort of touch the leaves, it kind of folds up. It's responding to a change in its environment. Why? It's alive. That's a characteristic of life. Here we have a gecko. You can see in the dark, very, very large vertical pupil. Watch what happens. You bring it out into bright light, and that pupil, of course, constricts. It's responding to a change in its environment. Homeostasis, kind of the weird one here by the name, you probably aren't familiar with it, but basically it means that the internal environment is going to stay the same. You and your temperature and your pH and your oxygen and your CO2 levels inside your body are roughly going to remain the same. Despite large changes in the outside environment, your internal environment is going to mostly stay the same. It gets hot outside. You still stay 98.6 degrees. It gets cold outside. You still stay 98.6 degrees. Your pH, your oxygen, all those as well, they are going to remain the same even though the outside environment is going to change a lot. And finally, evolution. As a group, living things change over time. We're not talking any one organism is going to suddenly sprout wings, but we're saying as a group, things change over time. A population of organisms will evolve. Individuals will not. So let's take a look at a couple examples here. Which characteristic is this? Here we have a cat that sat down on a hedgehog. Which characteristic is that? Well, that's definitely response. It's responding to a painful change in its environment. I love the betrayed look on its face, like, how could you? How about this one here? Well, that's metabolism. I'm not showing what's coming out on the other end, but remember, metabolism is eating and pooping, taking in materials and using them for energy. So there we have it, characteristics of life.